In a world that so often feels shaky and just uncertain, where do we find our balance? Well, today we're going to explore a kind of toolkit for navigating these exact times, and it comes from former First Lady Michelle Obama in her really personal book, The Light We Carry. So let's dive in. Right at the beginning of the book, she includes this beautiful line from a poem by Alberto Rios, and it just perfectly captures the whole theme. You know, this idea of finding strength and hope even when it feels like everything is working against you. It really sets the stage for a conversation about resilience, not about being perfect. And you gotta understand, this book isn't a reaction to just one single crisis. It's really about that constant hum of anxiety in our world today, from a global pandemic all the way down to our own personal struggles. She wrote it to be a companion, a set of practices that she uses to stay centered when the ground feels like it's shifting underneath her. So here's our plan for this explainer. First, we'll get into the book's core philosophy. Then, we're going to peek inside her toolbox at some specific tools. After that, we'll connect those tools to the stories that shaped her, translate it all into steps you can actually take, and wrap up with a big question for you to think about. All right, let's start with the big idea. How in the world do you find your footing when everything just feels like it's in constant motion? And this is absolutely crucial. Obama makes it super clear right from the get-go that she does not have all the answers. I mean, life is messy, right? Our histories are complicated, and there's just no magic formula. So instead of a rule book, she's basically opening up her personal toolbox to share what has worked for her. And this idea of a toolbox is really the central metaphor of the whole book. The thing is, your toolbox is completely unique to you. It might have routines, like a morning workout. It could have physical things, like a favorite cozy blanket, or just core beliefs that keep you grounded. And hey, what's in your toolbox today might be totally different from what's in it a year from now. And that is perfectly okay. It's meant to change and grow with you. The other huge idea is this concept of our light. Now, this isn't about being perfect or being the best. It's all about self-knowledge. It's about really understanding your own story, the good parts, the bad parts, and just owning all of it. She believes that when you're confident in your own light, it becomes so much easier to connect with and see the light in other people too. So what does this actually look like in practice? Let's take a look inside that toolbox and pull out one of her most powerful and maybe one of her most surprising tools. And to make this super real, she shares this deeply vulnerable moment. See, even before the pandemic, right when she was about to launch this massive arena tour for her book Becoming, she was lying awake at night, just doubts looping in her head, feeling that familiar tide of anxiety. And of course, that feeling only got more intense during the isolation and uncertainty of the years that followed. So, what was the answer? For a woman who's used to tackling these huge global issues, her comfort, her relief, came from something incredibly small and tangible. She picked up knitting needles. Yep, knitting. This simple, physical act became this incredibly powerful tool to quiet her racing mind. And this quote just explains it so brilliantly. Knitting reversed the flow of anxiety. It's like a form of active mindfulness. Instead of her mind controlling her hands with anxious fidgeting, her hands gave her mind a much-needed break. That gentle, repetitive rhythm let her get into a flow state, that quiet space where she could finally see past her fear and find her hope again. This gets to the core principle here. When we're faced with these massive goals, like changing the world or fixing a broken system, it's so easy to just feel paralyzed. But focusing on a small feat, making a blanket, organizing a single drawer, finishing a workout, that gives us a sense of accomplishment, a sense of control. It protects our energy, and it makes those big, scary problems feel just a little more manageable. Now, these tools, they don't just appear out of nowhere. They're forged in the fire of our own life experiences. So this next part is all about the stories from her life that helped fill up her toolbox. She shares this really powerful lesson she learned from the author Toni Morrison. Morrison realized that whenever her kids walked into a room, her first instinct was to scan for what was wrong. Is their hair combed? Is their shirt tucked in? But what kids are really, truly looking for is just to see that you are happy to see them. This idea of starting kind, of showing your gladness first, is a foundational tool for her. So much of her own journey was defined by feeling different. She was the tallest girl in the class, one of the only Black students at Princeton, and this created this persistent feeling of standing out, of not quite belonging. It forced her to develop tools for navigating all these spaces where she wasn't always truly seen or welcomed,
And this, right here, is the dangerous combination that can start to take root when you feel like an outsider. It's not just that you're different, it's that your differentness somehow makes you invisible or insignificant. This two-part thought is so self-undermining, and it was something she had to learn to actively fight against.
And this shows you just how deep those roots can go. She tells the story of her grandfather, Dandy. He was this brilliant man who was boxed out of opportunities his whole life because of racism. And those hurts, they turned into this deep-seated fear that limited his entire world. He was terrified to even drive outside of his own neighborhood. It's just a powerful reminder of how fear can literally draw the boundaries of our lives.
So how do you fight back against that feeling of being an only? Well, you build your own community. She calls this her kitchen table. That core group of trusted friends where you can show up 100% yourself, no armor needed. These are the people who see your light, even when you can't. And they're the ones who remind you that you absolutely matter. And check this out. Here's a fascinating piece of data that really drives home this power of being seen. Research shows that when teachers simply take a moment to greet each student at the door, academic engagement in that classroom goes up by over 20%. Just think about that. That small act of starting kind makes a huge, measurable difference. Okay, so we've dug into the philosophy, we've heard the stories. Now let's try to distill all of this into a practical, actionable toolkit that you can start using, like, today. So let's break this down into 4 key practices. First is just awareness, learning to recognize that moment you feel off balance. Second is about externalizing your anxiety, giving that negative voice a name. Third is all about connection, actively building your support system, your kitchen table. And fourth, it's about intention, making a conscious choice to start kind. We're going to unpack each of these now. Step 1 starts with just identifying that feeling of imbalance. Once you feel it, you need an arsenal of small, reliable fixes. For her, it could be something as simple as making her bed to feel a sense of order, or getting outside for a walk, or even just helping someone else out to shift her perspective. The key is to have your own go-to list of actions that help you hit the reset button. Now, for step 2, dealing with your fearful mind. She actually personifies her inner critic, that nagging voice of self-doubt. Psychologists call this cognitive diffusion. It's about creating distance from your negative thoughts. By giving that voice a personality, she can treat it like something separate from her, like an annoying roommate she can argue with or ignore, or just talk back to, overriding its negativity with what's actually true. And this brings us to step 3, building your table. I want you to take a second and really think about this. Who are the people in your life who let you just take off the armor? Who sees you and supports you, no questions asked? Identifying and really nurturing those relationships is one of the most important things we can do for ourselves. And finally, step 4 brings us right back to that lit-up face. Starting kind is such a powerful gift to give to other people, but it's also a gift to yourself. When we make a conscious choice to show someone that we are genuinely glad they're here, it strengthens our own sense of connection and makes us feel a little steadier in the process. So we've looked at the tools, the stories, and the actions. And this brings us to our final reflective section. What do we do with all of this? How do we carry it forward? This is really the beautiful conclusion of the whole idea. Knowing yourself, knowing your light, it doesn't just build your own confidence, it creates a ripple effect. When you are steady and sure in your own brightness, you actually empower others to be the same. One person's light genuinely, truly feeds another. And that, right there, is the ultimate takeaway. In a world that can so often make us feel small or invisible, this is such a powerful affirmation. Your unique experiences, your perspective, your light, they aren't just valuable to you. They are absolutely essential to the bigger picture. And so we're going to end where the book leaves us, with a question for you. It's an invitation to look inward at your own toolbox, to check on your small habits, to listen to the people at your kitchen table, and to challenge your fearful mind. It's a call to action, not for some grand gesture, but for the small, steady, powerful practice of carrying your own light every single day.